and we'll hold a little bit. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the final of the 5-seminar series that commemorates 10th year anniversary of Operation Tomodachi in the wake of Great Eastern Japan earthquake. We are letting people in to the having an access to the webinar room, so we will hold for a couple of more minutes before we get started. おりきさんも日本語のチャンネル選んでいただいてますか？大丈夫でしょうか？
先ほどウォルシュさんとやり取りをさせていただきました。
よかったです。はい。お願いします。
辰巳さん、今日人事発令が出て、沖村が北方総監に決まりました。
見たところです、私も。吉田さんが陸幕長で。
そうです、そうです、そうです。
はい。
今のうちに言っとかないと、すぐ
本
始まっ
当ですね。本当ですね。Okay, I think we can probably start. I'm sure people will be trickling in as the seminar goes, but we only have until 9 o'clock. Oh, about an hour, so we want to maximize our time. Again, welcome everyone to the final of this 5-seminar series. The Stimson Center collaborated with the Embassy of Japan to commemorate the 10th anniversary of Operation Tomodachi. My name is Yuki Tatsumi. I'm a co-director of East Asia Program and director of Japan's program at the Stimson Center. Before we go into the actual programming, let me make a few administrative announcements. This session is being simultaneously translated. So for those of you who has never used this function before, if you can look at the small globe icon at the bottom of your screen toward your right corner of the screen, you can right click that, and then you can choose the language of your choice between Japanese and English. And also, when I open this web session to a question and answer to all of you, please use the Q&A box, not the chat box, to ask one of the presenters or both of them a question. I will only be monitoring this Q&A box once this Q&A session starts. So with that, again, welcome. I am extremely honored to host this two very much highly respected officers to finish us off, to share their perspective and reflections, and looking forward as what the Operation Tomodachi mean and has meant and will mean for the U.S.-Japan alliance. From Tokyo, joining us is General Ryoichi Oriki, who was serving as a Chief of Staff of Joint Staff at Self-Defense Force at the time of the Operation Tomodachi. And from our side, from the United States, we are joined by Admiral Patrick Walsh, who was the commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet at that time. And they obviously closely work together as both officers had the first ever joint bilateral cooperative operation in the probably the entire history of the U.S.-Japan defense relationship. And since this is the very special final seminar, Ambassador Tomita Koji, Japanese ambassador to the United States, were originally planning to join us in person to welcome everybody to this seminar and remember the Operation Tomodachi. But unfortunately, official business took him away, but he was kindly enough to send us the video, pre-recorded video message. So we will first start off with that message, and then we'll get to it.
Mr. Tatsumi, ladies and gentlemen, good day to you all. Before I do anything else, let me thank the Stimson Center for hosting this event, for inviting me to be part of it. I haven't officially counted, but I think I'm doing 7 or 8 different virtual events related to the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. I know Admiral Walsh and General Oriki have also involved in at least one other event that I attended. And so I have been asking myself, what is the reason for so many reflections and symposiums about this disaster? I think it is more than the physical magnitude of the devastation, the lives lost and damage done. So what is it that has caused March 11th to become such a source of contemplation and review, such as this gathering? I think it is because we realized something had changed. Just yesterday, I told a group that when the earthquake hit, I was working in Tokyo as Deputy Director General of the North American Bureau. At the Bureau, after our initial shock of things moving around us, we immediately began working with our US colleagues. The Japanese government and our self-defense forces were doing all they could to respond, but the enormity of the disaster was overwhelming. The US forces rapidly jumped in and came to our assistance through Operation Tomodachi. I saw all the support that the US sent, all the service members, the aircraft, ships, the disaster aid coming together in what I have been calling arsenal of friendship. I believe the reason for all the reflection around March 11th is that we truly realize that we are more than allies. We are friends. When one friend comes to the aid of another friend, something changes. It is not just security treaties and diplomatic accords anymore. It is personal. We already, of course, had a relationship of trust which qualifies as friendship, but Tomodachi added a new depth. Another event also symbolized this for me. The August following the earthquake, I accompanied then Vice President Biden to Sendai, where I saw him console the victims and give them hope. He offered handshakes and hugs to each of the residents at a temporary housing complex in Natori City. 10 years later, those residents still have fond memories of his heartfelt words and regularly share those stories with others. Likewise, Japan as a nation still has fond memories of the assistance the United States gave us through Operation Tomodachi. Today, we commemorate that friendship and we give thanks for it. Thank you for caring and being part of this event. And my best wishes to you all.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Tomita. Although I know he has to be with us in spirit at this particular moment, but we're very grateful that he took time to pre-record this message. Let's just jump right in. The way it's going to go is first I would pose 2 opening questions to General Oriki and Admiral Walsh. And after their response to those 2 questions, I will open up the floor, if you will, to the rest of you to ask your own questions. When we're speaking, please, for those of you who are joining us, mute yourself so that background noise doesn't get in. And with that, let's get started. General Oriki, Admiral Walsh, thank you again for joining us this morning and this evening to you, General Oriki. Let me first by asking you this question. So it has been exactly 10 years ago. It has been exactly 10 years since Operation Tomodachi went underway. And this operation was unprecedented in its scope and the complexity of the emergency it faced and had to respond. When you reflect those operations, what is it that you remember most vividly? I would start with General Riki, if you will.
ありがとうございます。皆さんおはようございます。力でございます。東日本大震災が起きまして10年、経ちました。今お話もありましたように、まず最初に友達作戦を展開をしていただいたことに心から感謝したいというふうに思いますし、米国政府、それから米国民の皆様、それから当時のルス大使をはじめとする大使館の皆さん、もちろん友達作戦の現場で活動をしていただいた多くの米国の軍人の皆さんに感謝をしたいというふうに思っています。まず印象に残ったことなんですけど、当然ながら一番最初はまず米国の、派遣に関する決断の速さ、米国政府の、オバマ大統領もすぐに決断していただいたというふうに聞いておりますし、それに伴って米軍の展開というのがすごいスピードで日本に展開をしてくれた。米空母のロダンノ・レーガンをはじめ、もう11日に東日本大震災が起こったわけですけども、2日後にはもう東北の沖、仙台の沖に1万6000人規模の友達といいますか、軍隊が米軍が展開をしてくれた。このスピードには本当にびっくりいたしました。そのスピードというのがスピードと、それからその後の現場で活動をしてもらった米軍のこの活躍というのが日本にとってはもちろんですけれども、周辺の国に対しても日米同盟の強さというのを証明してくれた、表してくれたというふうに思っています。2つ目は救援活動、それから復旧活動ですけれども、本当に陸海空海兵隊、生活支援、それから学校とか鉄道とか、仙台空港とか、いろんなところも含めて、復旧活動ですね、それから、被災した方々に対する慰問とか激励とか、そういうことをやっていただきました。本当のところ、私の本音のところは、こうやって現場で活動してもらう米軍の方たちが、本当に大丈夫なんだろうかという、本当に不安があったんですね。というのは、こういう災害の時に現場で活動して、米軍に活動してもらうのは本当に初めてのことでしたので、やっぱり文化とか伝統とか考え方とか違うんで、心配してたんですが、全く心配いらずに、本当に米軍の方々が日本人の目線、それから被災者の目線で活動をしていただいた。昨日ですか、テレビを見てましたら、まだその時の被災者の方と、それから米軍人の方が SNS でまだつながって、10年間まだその交流を続けているというのがテレビであったんですね。だから、これはお一人だけじゃなくて、まだまだそういう関係というのはつながっている。これはやっぱり本当に驚くべきことだというふうに思ってます。それがやっぱり日米関係を象徴していることだなというふうに思って。もう一つは厳しいことですけれども、これから本当に我々が教訓にしなきゃいけないということなんですけれども、やっぱり福島原発対応だというふうに思ってるんですけれども、これも米国政府、それから米軍から日本の政府、それから自衛隊に対してものすごい提案支援をしてサポートしていただいた。本当に感謝してるんですが、やっぱり教訓にしなきゃいけないのは、発災があってから約10日間ぐらいは、やっぱり日米のこの情報、原発に関する情報の共有という部分が、かなりこの齟齬があったというか、行き違いがあった。やっぱその付近のところはものすごく大きくて、それがやっぱりこの極論すれば日米同盟まで影響するような両国政府のこの状態になったというのは当初ですね。だからやっぱりその付近のこのコミュニケーションリスクというか、その付近についてはこれから日米で 厳しい情勢の中で、何かこれからお互いに対応していくときには、情報共有ということは、よく注意しながら、理解しながらやっていくべきだろうなというふうに思っています。今3つ申し上げましたけど、1つだけもう1つ最後申し上げると、この基本のところはやっぱり人と人のつながりだと思ってるんです。だからやっぱり日米同盟が強いということは、やっぱり、軍隊、米軍と自衛隊、それから国民同士というこのつながり、心のつながりというのが日米同盟の支えだというふうに思ってますし、もう一つ自負というか自分たちの誇りとするのは、米軍と自衛隊のつながりというのが今までの訓練とかそういうことを通じながらここまで高まってきているということを、不幸な災害でしたけれども、この東日本大震災を通じてもう一度確認できたというか、そういうことを強く感じています。これからもそういう関係を続けていきたいというふうに思っています。
Thank you, General Ricky. Let me now turn to Admiral Walsh to see if he would like to add his own thoughts to this.
Yuki, thank you. Thank you to the Stimson Center. Thank you for the ambassador's remarks. And thank you for the opportunity to listen to my good friend and colleague, General Ariki, who I have stayed in touch with because he is a man of great stature and clearly the right leader at the right time for the people of Japan and for those of us around the world who watched and waited patiently as Japan wrestled with a very, very big and complex problem. That would be the way I would scope my remarks, is that it was the size of the problem as well as the complexity of the triple disaster that stood out in my mind. So for us, it was March 10th in the evening when we first had indications on the seismograph that there was an earthquake with an epicenter off the coast of Japan. We realized that anything over a magnitude 8.3 earthquake was a 1,000-year event for Japan. This was 9.1, so our immediate reaction was that there was a problem with the technology. Surely the machine was not recording this accurately. And sadly, we learned very, very quickly the size and the magnitude of the earthquake was beyond anything anyone had ever contemplated. And the tsunami then was much more devastating than anyone realized. With the loss of primary, secondary, and tertiary power to Fukushima power plant, created another level of complexity that required us to think differently in terms of how we would approach humanitarian assistance and disaster relief while underneath the umbrella of a nuclear disaster. So we moved my command element headquarters and established the Joint Support Force in Yokota. And that became the headquarters for Operation Tomodachi, as far as the work that the military from the Self-Defense Force and the US Armed Forces. We learned very quickly that people needed information, and the complexity of the problem became more complicated because of the many very sizable aftershocks that took place in the numbers of hundreds to maybe even 1,500 aftershocks over the course of our time in Japan. We measured our ability to be successful by our ability to anticipate what actions needed to take place with each aftershock, which meant that we needed a relationship and an understanding of what the facts were at Fukushima, how TEPCO was responding, what the ministries of Japan needed. And that prompted a very high level cadence between General Riki, General Bansho, myself, and the US Embassy that we would meet several times a day. Our goal was to establish a relationship that was very transparent and it was unified for effort rather than unity of command. And that allowed us to approach this where we could accept as many offers of assistance as we could, because the realization that we needed the best solutions the world could offer really meant that we knew our own limitations and we had to think differently in terms of how to approach the problem. Our ability to grasp and understand the situation was accelerated because people needed to make decisions about whether to stay or whether to leave. And they relied on the Self-Defense Force and the US Armed Forces to help them make those decisions. So it was critically important to have information available and quickly. The traditional way of passing communication back and forth between armed forces as well as between the government and people was just too slow for the needs of the population in Japan. So we realized information was critically important, that it needed to be transparent and allow people to make the kinds of decisions that they needed to make. In terms of one of the lessons that General Riki identified, I would like to amplify that. One of the challenges that we had is we didn't understand, at least at our levels, what would happen when radioisotopes hit seawater. We don't know, we couldn't interpret from the modeling and analysis that was available, because the modeling and analysis that we had at the time was all based on oil dispersion, meaning from oil tankers that would break up and the impact it would have subsequently to the environment. So that meant that we had to interpret and to a degree guess what would happen when the radiation went into the atmosphere, it went into the food supply, it went into the water supply, and it hit salt water. So there was certainly a period of time where we needed to educate ourselves. And I give General Field, Burt Field, great credit for the realization of the way that we could organize how to think about it amongst the Joint Support Force when he said we needed to build a reactor on a whiteboard so that we could understand where the key sensors were, what the key information was that we were looking for, so that we could get our questions answered and then be able to pass those answers along to the people of Japan as soon as we could. So it was the size of the triple disaster and then the complexity associated with it were the key events that I remembered feeling and thinking as we landed at Yokota.
Thank you so much for such a personal account. And I think what both of you identified, General and Admiral, about the information, the significance of information and importance of maintaining transparency has really run through previous force seminars, and it has consistently come up again and again and again. And then I see that we all see that now. That was such a formidable challenge as this really complex coordination work moves forward. So let me move to the next question. So obviously, all of us hope that a tragedy like this and the large-scale disaster of this magnitude and complexity will never happen again. But still, we still have to prepare for the potential risk of another large-scale disaster hit either Japan or the United States, or even other parts of Indo-Pacific that are more prone to large-scale disaster like this. We can even think now that we have been living under the impact of the COVID-19, we can even now think of the situation in which impacted area can get hit by pandemic at the same time, complicating the rescue effort. So reflecting on lessons that you just both shared with us, what are some of the critical elements to facilitate and even improve based on building upon what we had 10 years ago, facilitate bilateral operation between the two militaries should something like this happen, and should the two military again are called to respond? Let me start with you, Admiral Walsh, this time, and then ask General Riki to follow.
Sure. I think one of the benefits that we all realized is the true benefit of time and resources and people set aside for training and exercises. I know General Riki, without even asking the question, probably had to go through the same calculations that we do when it comes to setting aside time and money and people to go through bilateral exercises. And oftentimes we have to justify those decisions, and we can't do something else because we've set aside our time and our money because we're investing in exercises. There are many people who look at those exercises and the planning efforts associated with it and say, these are not plans that we would use in actual operational wartime use. And that the planning exercises are oftentimes describing scenarios that may or may not happen. The value of having our two groups work closely together, no matter what the scenario, no matter what kind of environment, whether it's a pandemic or something else, is that we have a chance to learn each other, what's important to them, what their priorities are, what the red lines are in terms of engaging operations together. And in the course of doing that, we learn at a very technical level how to exchange information, how to communicate, how to resupply, how to support, how to rescue, how to be in a position in order to support the needs of our alliance partner and our friend. I give great credit to Admiral Van Buskirk, who was on the ground visiting another port when the Great East Japan earthquake, tsunami, and radiation disaster took place, and without any calls from us, immediately recalled the crew, got the ship underway, and knew exactly where to go and what to do based on instinct and effort and a long time association with the people of Japan, the government of Japan, and the self-defense forces. That ability is really reflective, I think, of investments that have been made since the alliance started, and that to a great degree, we are the beneficiaries of all of the previous work and experience of our two armed forces together. And we were in position largely because of the success of our predecessors. And I think that's the best way to frame it. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Walsh, for that thought. General Oriki, your thought.
はい、ありがとうございます。今、ウェルス大将がおっしゃったことに全く同感で、全部お話しいただいたかなと思って、もう話すことはないのかなというぐらい、本当にこう訓練の重要性というのをお伝え願ったというふうに思っています。いずれにしても、災害が起これば、前提として我々はその危機管理上ですね、複合災害が起こるという、大規模災害の場合起こるということを前提にこれから考えていかなければいけないというふうに思ってますし、例えば大規模地震と日本のことをこうイメージしながらお話ししますと、大水害がコロナのような感染症がある、状況によってはサイバー攻撃もあるかもしれないし、あるいは防衛警備上の不測事態というのが同時に起こる可能性もある、そういうこともあり得るというふうに思っています。そういう中で日本のことを中心に申し上げれば、一番やはり日本人が脅威に思っているのは、この30年、これからの30年の間に 70% ぐらいの確率で首都直下、東京の直下地震が起こるという可能性がある。これは30年後じゃなくて、いつ起こるかわからないという、そういう状態なんですね。でそれで、亡くなる方が予測では2万3000人とか、家の倒壊が60万棟ぐらいは倒れてしまうとか、そういう状況なわけです。そうすると、首都直下の場合は、首都ですから、情報網とか通信網とか同時に被災するし、我々が考えつかないようなことが起こりうる、そういうことを頭に置かなきゃいけない。もう一つは同じような大体確率で、東京を中心にしますと、東京よりも南東の太平洋側の正面、 1000キロぐらいにわたって最悪の場合は、南海トラフと言いますけど、この地震が起こる可能性がある。この時は23万人ぐらいが亡くなる可能性があるというふうに言われています。この時には、もう本当の国家的な危機になると思いますけれども、これ作戦で考えれば、陸上からの作戦というよりも、どちらかというと、海上からの作戦みたいなことが求められる可能性があるというふうに思っています。いずれにしても複合災害もありますけれども、大規模災害というのは、他のいろんな要素が絡みながら、何が起こるかわからない、この様相がわからないということが特色なのかなと。それに対して、自衛隊、それから米軍も協力いただいて対応していくということが大事なのかなというふうに思っています。そういう面で、この作戦活動なり起こすときに何が一番大事かということは、やはり先ほどウォルシュ大将がおっしゃった通り、やっぱり日米ということを考えれば、日米の共同訓練というのをいかに日頃からやっておくかということだというふうに思っています。その仕組みは、2015年に東日本大震災の後の4年後に日米のガイドラインの見直しがありまして、日米の同盟調整メカニズム、要するに調整のメカニズムが改善をされました。これは何かあったときにこのメカニズムを使うということだったんです。平時から使うということで改善をされて、私の故郷であります九州の熊本地震、これ2016年、それから、今の尖閣の問題、それから北朝鮮の弾道ミサイルの問題、こういうことも絡めながらこのメカニズムが実効的に動かされている。これは非常に大事なことで、先ほどのこの調整をやることが情報の透明性を高めて、お互いの認識を一緒にして行動に向かっていけるということだというふうに思うんです。ですから日米共同訓練を通じながら日米のお互いの役割分担とかそういうことをきっちり固めながら、どんどん訓練の連動をアップしていくということは非常に大事で、その前提としてやはり情報の共有というか、同じ情報の画面を日本と米国が同時に見るということが大事で、それぞれの画面を見ていたらこれはいけないわけで、システム的にもそういうことをこれからより整備をしていかなければいけないというふうに思っています。もう一つはこの大規模災害の訓練をやるということは、私は有事の本当の武力戦といいますか、そういう戦いになった時にも本当に有効だというふうに思ってるんです。その大規模訓練をやることによって、他の省庁なり政府なり、それから民間なりと調整をしながら大規模訓練というのはやっていきますけれども、そういうことが有事にも対応していく一つの要素になるというふうに思っていますし、訓練は本当に大事だというふうに思っています。以上です。ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much, General Ricky, for your thoughts. So I think we learned a great deal from both of you about the depth of cooperation that the two military had, and that is precisely because of the several decades long of the working relationship that not only just yourselves, but then, like Admiral Walsh pointed out, your predecessors all had helped forged over the years. So now that we two military has this level of deep cooperation and cooperative relationship, can the two countries help other countries with specifically, as we all know, Indo-Pacific region is a very natural disaster prone area. So these countries, those countries that are very prone to those large scale natural disasters, these know-how about cooperation. But one thing that I would like to, I guess, get your thoughts on is that this Operation Tomodachi was very unique, especially from U.S. military's disaster relief point of view, that U.S. really worked with the country, even after the disaster hit, had a high level of governance functioning government operating. But then those types of after impact of the governing power of the country really varies, depends on the parts of the world. But even with that case, can two military maybe share that experience of working together and almost like a know-how even with the countries of the other military that you will be helping or providing support with? So let me start with you, Admiral Walsh, and maybe turn to General Reiki for additional thought.
Well, to begin with, the citizens of the country affected will turn to their respective militaries and expect answers from the armed forces. So the idea of armed forces throughout Asia Pacific, Indo-Asia Pacific, having regular dialogue, communications, and learning about the capabilities of each other exists today. But as you rightly point out, not every country, and I'm thinking of Myanmar at the time, not every country will accept that help. And that's a decision that their leaders will have to make. But in the meantime, for friendly countries in the region, we have an established dialogue where we invite young leaders with much potential in their own armed forces to come to our respective war colleges, to come to conferences and other symposia where these lessons that we've learned, some the hard way, are shared openly so that others will know not only what to look for in terms of an operation like this, but also other considerations that leaders need to be aware of. General Riki was talking about, and this is my way of interpreting what he just said, that the military has to be prepared to do more than just one thing. So life doesn't allow us to just simply focus on the disaster. We have other national security concerns that we have to be aware and alert and prepared for. And so it's critically important to factor that in terms of our planning. And I saw General Riki wrestle with those decisions throughout the course of Operation Tomodachi. But I do think that the people of the respective countries will turn to the armed forces for answers in times of disaster because they serve as the backbone protecting the national security interests of each of the respective countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Walsh. General Oriki, some additional thoughts, if you would like to add.
ありがとうございます。先ほど、部長もおっしゃってた通り、例えば南太平洋とか、開発途上国とか、そういう面を見たときに、これからより気候変動とかの影響もあって、そういうこの災害とかが起こる可能性がものすごく大きくなっているというふうに思っています。そういう中で日米共同しながら、そういうこの災害に対しても対応していかなければいけないというふうに思っていますが、ただ日本とアメリカを考えたときに、ちょっとこの体制上というか、システム上の違いがありまして、米国の場合は、米国の判断で、その規模も運用も、それから派遣するかしないかも決めて、大体主導的に動けるわけですけれども、日本の海外での災害派遣といいますか、活動は、国際緊急援助活動というシステムがありまして、これの要件が、被害を受けた国の要請か、国連の要請に基づいて協議をしながら出かけていくわけですね。派遣していくわけですね。だからそこが大きく日米の取り組み方というのが違っているという、そこのところはご理解いただきたいというふうに思っています。そういう中で日本としては、システム上は救助活動とか医療活動とか、それから物とか人の輸送とか、そういうことで、この国連を中心にした活動になるというのが今までの前提です。でも、そういう中でも私よく思い出すんですけれども、2005年にインドネシアのバンダーチェで、スマトラですね。で、大きな津波災害があって、その時には米軍の司令部はタイのウタパオに司令部を作って ってたんですが、日本の統合の調整所、まだ倒幕はできてませんでしたが、統合調整所、ウタパオに一緒に、米軍と一緒に展開をして、そこでお互いに情報交換をやったり、いろんなことができましたので、そういうことも含めて、日米で共同できる場面というのは、私はこれからも出てくるというふうに思っています。で、軍という形で見たときに、お互いに現場の被災を受けた国のその災害を支援する、サポートするということと、それから軍同士のこの交流というか、それがものすごくいろんな国が集まって災害支援しているわけで、それの交流を通じながらお互いの信頼醸成とか、そういうことも重ねてというか、向上できる、そういう貴重な場だというふうに、今までの経験から見れば、そういうふうに考えています。以上です。
Thank you, General Ricky. By the way, when hearing while I'm listening to both of your remarks, your good friend Bert Field sent in a comment in the Q&A box, and he's very, very happy to see you on screen, and he sends his regards, and he always he says that he always learns something from listening to you. So just wanted to send that message along. Another question, maybe this is for General Oriki, but then I think Admiral Walsh may have some thought to it as well. Has the experience of responding to Operation Tomodachi changed in any way how the Self-Defense Force responds to a smaller earthquake, more in a more limited area, or other natural disasters in Japan? For example, you mentioned the flooding. It sometimes occurs in the during the rainy season in the Kyushu area. So just wondered if has Operation Tomodachi influenced the way that Self-Defense Force now approaches the these types of relief operation.
そうですね。この災害に対する国民の期待というのがまずあって、大体自衛隊の場合には、年間約500件ぐらいの災害派遣に出てます、自衛隊は派遣されてます。で、そのうち7割ぐらいは緊急患者というか、離島ですね、離れた島から患者を運ぶというのがありますから、実際的にはそんなには多くはありませんけれども、やっぱり国民の期待というのがかなり上がってきているということは、早く出動しなきゃいけないということがより求められて、どんどん早くなっていくということは言えると思います。それと、自治体の要求というのも自衛隊に対する要求度が高まってきて、またそれにも応えなきゃいけないということですね。だからいろんな災害が、大きな災害がなくて、災害ではなくて、小規模、中規模の災害がたくさん起こってるわけですけれども、どちらかというと、それに応えてはいます。応えてはいるんですけれども、残念ながらあまりにも災害派遣に対応しすぎてる。そうすると、軍としての、自衛隊としての訓練の時間とか、いろんなサポートを準備する時間とかということがだんだん制約をされてきてる。自衛隊にも限界があるということを今から表明し、国民にも理解を求めてもらわなければいけない時代になってきてるというふうに私自身は考えてます。自衛隊そのものはスピードアップして活動していろんなことをやってます。米国で言えば多分州兵の方がやられているようなことをやってるわけですね。だからそこのジレンマというのが非常に出てきているというふうに思ってます。
That is a really interesting perspective that you laid out. That as you may have more on the ground HADR experience, but then that does take a way to recuperate, train, educate, share the experience. That is an interesting perspective. Admiral Walsh, do you have anything to offer on this one?
I think General Ricky rightly points out there is a decision-making process with each incident with each disaster in terms of making the decision or extending an invitation, asking for other countries to participate. There is a line of funding that goes along with this that just doesn't magically appear. It has to come from some account. And so those decisions are made by leaders at a very high level before engaging the actual operating forces. And although we haven't said it, I think General Riki infers that the security environment in the Indo-Pacific region has changed significantly since Operation Tomodachi. That those that we could rely on to at least realize the extent of the disaster and to not take advantage of Japan when it was going through the triple disaster, I don't know that we can make those assumptions today. And as he pointed out, we could see incidents like this play out in cyber. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it will always be a natural disaster, but there could be other intrusions into the fabric of society and the economy where resources from the military would be very helpful, but governments have to invest in these other capabilities as well.
Thank you for that thought. Next question is for Admiral Walsh. And Admiral Walsh, in your first, in your opening remarks in the earlier in this session, you talked about the challenges that you faced from the just a sheer magnitude of the complexity of this triple disaster really made it difficult for you to have reliable, actionable intelligence. And there sometimes were initial outset of the Operation Tomodachi. There were communication gap, information gap that U.S. military and self-defense force has to reconcile so that you two can work together better. And what are the how did you on U.S. side figure out the way to have a better intelligence, actionable information on the scope of operations? Do you really primarily relied on your counterpart with the self-defense forces for the information to come? Do you also work with your component like 7th Fleet 3 MAF who's out there to complement those information? How did you create that operational picture?
In order to have a common operating picture, we needed to have people who had access to information associated with the disaster. So it went beyond the self-defense force and the U.S. Armed Forces. It had to extend into the ministries. It had to extend into TEPCO. Mr. Hosono had meetings every evening. We were invited to at least witness and participate that. And it's important to have many different perspectives represented in the room so that as information is presented, each can come to their own conclusion in terms of developing a common operating picture. One of the advantages of working with the ministries of Japan is that there had been significant investment in radiation sensors all around Tokyo, so that we could look at any given time of day and see real time what the background radiation was, what the level of iodine was or cesium in the atmosphere, and be able to determine the overall level of safety or security issues that we needed to be concerned about. The questions that people were asking were very basic, which is, do I need to leave Japan? The very idea of standing in a line, in a queue, waiting for a bus or waiting for a ship meant more exposure than people should have if they would have just simply stayed in their respective homes. Questions like that were really critically important to answer. And it wasn't until we were able to have information coming in from all these different perspectives, including understanding how much radiation was in the atmosphere, how much was on the ground, how much was in the water supply, could we make judgments then and pass that information along. It took us longer than we wanted it to in order to be able to develop and share that picture. But those were the building block steps that it took in order to have a common picture that we could share with people.
Thank you. General Riki, I would like you to ask if you would like to add anything, but as you do that, let me pose another question that just came in that are for you as well. So for the last several years, especially Ground Self-Defense Force has been adapting to changing operational environment, like establishing Rikujo Sotai, ground component command, rapid deployment regiments, or the amphibious rapid deployment brigade. And the maritime and air self-defense forces also have been making some changes as well. What more can the self-defense force of all branches, all services do to organize and equip forces to be able to react quickly? And what more can the alliance do at the tactical or more of a technical level to improve coordination and interoperability, really kind of revolving around both you and Admiral Walsh have been talking about all this morning.
まず、先ほどの情報に関して申し上げれば、まず津波災害と原発災害というのをやっぱり2つ分けて考えなければいけないと思ってます。で、津波災害の場合には残念ながら、もうそれは結果に対してこれからどういうふうにして取り組んでいこうかということですから、比較的情報は動かないという捉え方ですけれども、原発の場合は先ほどウォルシュ大将もおっしゃったようにいろんな要素が絡んでて、動く情報に対してお互い日米がそれぞれの国がどういうふうにして情報を抑えていくかという、そういう難しさがあるというふうに思っています。そういう中で日米で一番最初に申し上げたように、最初の時期は日米でその情報共有の底があったというふうにお話ししましたけれども、10日ぐらい過ぎた後、日米の合同の調整所ができて、関係機関がみんな集まって頭が揃っていくという、情報が共有されていくという、そういう体制になった。そこから対応も一貫したものが取れていくようになったというふうに理解をしてますし、やっぱり日米の先ほどの調整ということは大事だというふうに思ってます。それからこれから自衛隊がどういうふうにして即応体制を整えていくかということですけれども、確かに組織としては陸上で言えば総隊を作ったり、水陸両用の部隊を作ったりしてますけれども、まだ規模的にも、それから部隊的にも、装備的にも、まだ不足しているものがまだまだあります。だからそれをどういうふうにして、早く防衛力整備の観点から整えていくかということを、高めていかなきゃいけないというふうに思っています。今、重点に考えているのは、やっぱり統合した力をどうやって起動させるか、特に南の方にどうやって起動させるかということが、今、焦点で防衛力整備というのが、重点に進んでいるというふうにご理解をいただきたいというふうに思っています。米軍とのオペラビリティについては、これに関しては非常に難しいんですが、ただ、米軍との場合には全然規模も量も違いますけれども、装備的にはかなり似通ってきている、共通している部分がある。そういうところを、すべての装備がアメリカと米軍と一緒になるということは言えませんけれども、日本独自のものも当然ながらありますけれども、少なくともリンクというかシステムというか、それの重要な指揮統制の部分ということに関して言えば、それは強化をしていって重点整備をしていく。それがインオペのエンターオペリティのこの一番重要なことだというふうに思っています。宇宙、サイバー、電磁戦、いろいろありますけれども、やっぱり指揮統制の問題だというふうに思っています。
Thank you. An hour has flew by, and we're about to reach at the end of the hour. So, last question to finish up to both of you. So, as the time goes on, we are now commemorating the 10th anniversary of Operation Tomodachi. As the time goes on, more and more service members who serve in Japan will likely not have that personal experience of Operation Tomodachi. So moving forward, what are the some of the key lessons would you like to hand down with them based on what you've experienced personally? So let me start with you, Emerald Walsh, and I will ask Jenna Oriki to finish.
I think that as long as we continue to invest in people, their education, their training, and people-to-people programs, that we will find a way to manage ourselves through the crisis of the moment and be able to allow the alliance to grow and thrive. If we were to cut back on those programs, that to me would pose great risk on our ability to feel confident about the future. I can look back at previous times where the US and Japan have worked together. Each time frame was a unique crisis in its own right. In the days following the attack in New York City and in the Pentagon in 9/11, Japan came to the aid of the United States, and what Japan was able to do was to offer oil. We were able to use that oil to build a coalition of 26 countries in the Middle East. And part of that was giving countries such as Pakistan an opportunity to have an active role in the Armada. When we did that, Saudi Arabia participated. When Saudi Arabia participated, all the GCC countries participated. And that was all because of a decision made in the Diet that allowed for support in this role in terms of helping the United States work through that crisis. There will be examples in the future, but what makes it possible is the investment that we've made in people and understanding cultures and the priorities of our respective allied partners.
Thank you, Admiral Walsh. General Oriki, final word goes to you.
はい、ありがとうございます。日本も防衛法制というか、法律的にもだいぶ安倍政権の時に整備をされてきて、日米がいろんな有事でなくても訓練でもそういう平時の間でもお互いに助け合うという、そういう仕組みというかシステムが出来上がってきた。これは非常に日米同盟を米軍との関係を高めるという意味では非常に大きな意味を私は持っているというふうに思っています。これを高めるにはお互いの、軍同士の結局は訓練になってしまうんですけれども、訓練を通じた指揮官同士、それからスタッフ同士、それから本当に演習をやりながら隊員同士の関係という、この付近のところがお互いに一緒に顔を合わせて一緒に訓練をやるということが本当のこの基盤というか基礎になると思うんです。ですから絶対に日米共同訓練というのは小さい規模も大きい規模も私はやめてはいけないし絶対に継続すべきだというふうに思っています。それが大きな日米同盟の基本になるし基礎だというふうに思ってますので、これからもそういうことでお互いが努力をしていけばもっともっと日米同盟というのは強くなるというふうに理解をしています。
Thank you. I think both of you just spoke to us about the importance and investment in people that leads to the forging this long-lasting friendship that can be only forged through those shared experiences, whether that may be training or cultural exchanges or studying at each other's institutions. And I think that is really the tremendous message that you both can share with our future generation of those service members that might be involved in this kind of complex operations. This comes to the conclusion of this final seminar. I would like to thank both of you, General Oriki, Admiral Walsh, again for spending time with us this evening for you, General Oriki. Thank you for postponing your bedtime. I know it's getting close to midnight in Japan, so I very much appreciate that. Also, Admiral Walsh, I know you have to we asked you to get up extra early in Texas, so I really, really appreciate you that as well. I hope now that Texas is enjoying a little better weather after the deep freeze that you all experienced a couple of weeks ago. But and again, thank you for everyone that tuned in from both United States, Japan, and other parts of Asia. And thank you again. And let's not forget this tragedy, but then also the great friendship that came out of this Operation Tomodachi. And thank you again for joining us in this seminar. I'd like to thank Embassy of Japan for the collaboration, and that this concludes the seminar. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。Thank you very much.